Well, hello, and welcome to Opal City Confidential, a Starman podcast. And we're going into the ages of Pulp because we're going to be covering Annual 2, which is part of the Pulp Hero series. And this is in 1997. And I'm joined again by Dave. Hey, Dave.
Hello. It's nice to be back. It's been a while.
All right. We're going to kind of jump right into this one because it's the same day as the last episode. Last time I talked about Jack, we talked about Jack because we're doing this all at one time. But I want to talk about this cover.
Mhm.
It's a Tony Harris cover. Is it? Yes, it
Yeah,
is.
yeah. It's got his initials on the right.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I want to say that I would love this as a poster.
it's great, isn't it? It looks like.
It,
I mean, this was such the 1997 sort of trek on the BBC on the DC annuals was Pulp Heroes. So like you got issues of Superman or like My Greatest Adventure, or I think Impulse and Robin were both weird Western tales and all this sort of stuff. But Jack's My Greatest Adventure, I think, was what Green Lantern was flagged up as. That was a really good one. But this is flagged up as young romance, and it's like Jack has never looked more like a matinee idol, has he?
no, no, and his girl. Well, okay, I'm going to get confused because we're going to be changing names here. Sadie has never
Yes.
looked more like Joan Crawford or
Mm,
Barbara Stanwyck or oh, she could be Jean Arthur.
yeah.
I don't know how good your 40s movies knowledge
No, I
is.
can't. Oh, yeah. I mean, and
It's
that's
very
appropriate.
1930s, early 40s starlet.
Yeah, and that's appropriate given Jack's sort of tendency to be slightly retro in his dress and all and his attitudes and stuff. So it's very nice. He's
Oh
um
yeah.
he's definitely he's definitely paying close attention to something on that cover. Is it? He's
Yes.
enjoying you anyway.
Yeah, it's a beautiful cover. I like that it has the DC Pulp Heroes old 1960s logo. It's got
Yeah,
the 40s number 2 in the corner. It's got the Comic Code Authority. It's amazing cover because this is one of my favorite Starman issues in a lot of ways.
yes,
One, it's 4 stories and they're all really good. And the framing sequence of Sadie and Jack's their romantic journey. We've already
yeah,
seen half of it, but now we get the
yeah.
details.
We've seen bits of it, and it's weird
Yeah.
because I remember when I read this one, I had to sort of when this came out and I read it, I had to go back because I couldn't remember I couldn't remember Jack bumping into her like he sort of like the recap. I couldn't remember her first appearance. Um, yeah, it's an interesting one because Sadie's been around, and in this one we find out who she really is and why why she's got involved with Jack or why she was looking for Jack in the first place, and it's an interesting one. It's I think out of all the certainly all the ones that I've been on, and out of all the issues that you've done, this is certainly the most adult with a capital A story or issue. It's it's very it's very grown up. It deals with really it deals with adult relationships in a way that I think comics at this time, especially superhero comics, didn't really deal with in such a considered and mature fashion.
And Robinson, but we were talking about in the previous episode about that going into this, we're going to see less of Tony
Yeah,
and a lot of times passed. And talking to David, it's all kind of truncated. They set up some stuff about the mist that we're going to need for later, which is fine. You know what I mean? In 2 issues, but
yeah,
and we get the journey to the stars, but we also get a team up with Shazam, with Captain Marvel.
yeah,
So, and James is going through a divorce at this point. We're going to talk. I mean, he's talked about it. His Airboy he talks
yeah,
about it. He's very
yeah,
forthcoming about it.
yeah,
And that he creates this wonderful love story. Because I think this is one of the best love stories I've ever read in a comic. I believe Superman and Lois are in love. I believe Batman and many of his girlfriends are in love. I believe Barry loves Iris. You know what I mean? I think
yeah, yeah,
Linda and Wally, great couple. They're written well.
yeah,
But the blend of him falling in love with Sadie and what it leads to him as a hero, because this book is
yeah,
about this whole run is about I don't want to be a hero. I've become a hero. I accept being a hero. I am sent on the hero's quest.
yeah.
And then I must decide, will I continue to be a hero or will I be, and I'll keep my mouth shut. what the next
Yeah.
piece is, but it is handled. We don't know this is coming. We know about it now.
Yeah.
And this issue fills all the holes we need to understand every choice Jack takes in this series going forward. That
Yeah.
Sadie and his relationship really becomes the pivotal theme of what is happening to Jack. Does he have adventures? Yes. Does he go on a quest? He's going on the quest because his princess, his maid
Yeah.
Marion,
Yeah.
is asked him to go on a quest, and we're going to
Yeah.
see that happen.
Yeah.
And it is it is absolutely one of my favorite things about the series.
Yeah. And everything that sort of happens in the second half of the series spins out of this issue.
It
You know,
does.
it's
And
interesting.
annuals are supposed to be not important issues.
Well, exactly. That's the thing. It's a lot of the time, especially this year, especially with the Pulp Heroes, they were stories that they weren't part of the main sort of continuity. They were sort of separate. They were incredibly satisfying.
They were. And DC did
some of
this
them.
for what, about 3 or 4 years with different things?
Well, yeah, because
The
if I remember,
previous annual was a part of a series, wasn't it?
if I remember rightly, 1994 was Elseworlds.
Mm-hmm.
1995 was Year One. 1996 was Legends of the Dead Earth, and then 97 was Pulp Heroes.
And something, yeah. And
Can't
what,
remember what they did the year after that.
yeah. And what happens is Robinson, unlike others, because this is designed to be a finite project. I don't think he has an annual 3. No, he does not have. There is no annual
No,
3.
there isn't one.
No,
No.
but the Lost Earth one is the Shade telling us other Starman stories.
Yeah,
We
because
covered
that's
it, and it's
it's
wonderful.
got yeah, the Lost Earth has that's when that's when we first meet Will Payton properly in this not Will Payton, sorry, Prince Gavin.
Yeah,
That's
it's the first time we get a Prince
yeah.
Gavin story. And this one is probably one of the most important issues of the entire run is
Yeah.
an annual part
Yeah.
of a series. So he
Yeah.
knew how to blend it. And
Yeah.
I do think the stories are kind of pulp.
Oh yeah, very much so. I mean, there I think a couple of them more than others. But it also does one of them also, we'll get to in a sec. It does that James Robinson thing of looking at something from the past and looking at it again with sort of adult eyes. Not in a sort of slavish way that Roy Thomas would. If Roy Thomas was going to write a third Starman and Black Canary team up, it probably would have been very different to the one that James does here. But James sort of extrapolates on the old stories and does something very adult and very believable that would be referenced elsewhere. I remember there's an issue of Justice League of America Year One, the Mark Waid Barry Kitson series that makes reference to when Dinah finds out something that Jack finds out in this issue. No, Jack does. Yeah, Jack does. Does he?
Because he's
yeah,
not right. James isn't the first one to say there was a romance, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then let's jump to some pertinent details and then we'll go through this because it is because I do want to kind of break this one down a bit. It's got a lot of guest artists. It's got Mitch Bird, who I don't remember. Drew
Mitch Bird I remember because he drew Guy Gardner for quite a while.
Oh, did he? Okay, I didn't read all the Guy Gardner. There's some ears. Stefano Gaudano, who I don't really remember, but all the art is great. I mean, everything. Gene Ha and
Say No More. Say No More.
Yeah, and Steve Yao. I really like Steve Yao.
Yeah, I like Steve. I met him. I met him at a convention. Must have been 97, 98, because I got him to sign my copy of, I think it's issue 35, when they're fighting for the soul of Grundy.
Yes.
And there's a panel where you see Ted flying in costume to the rescue, and I got Steve to sign that panel for me.
Oh my God, it's a great panel. It's a great panel. And this one's called Stars in My Eyes, and I do want to kind of read the top, intro panel, because just because it's I liked it so much. It goes, "Don't ask me how it happened. Was it right? Was it wrong? I don't know. I don't have the answers. The answers are pink, dabbled clouds drifting away on the warm breeze of my love. love, love. It filled me, my head, my heart, and I knew there was dangers loving a superhero, but I was blind to them, blind because I had stars in my eyes. Chapter one, the one, first months and a lawman's choice.
Yes.
We get through Sadie's eyes. She explains, and and she's explaining it to Jack in a way of
Yeah.
why, I had something on my mind when we met the first time. And we get a recap, and the art, and this is Bird's art, and it's great. I love his Jack, I love his Sadie. And
Yeah.
Sadie this is the first time I really feel that she looks like she did before. And
Yeah.
when we get to the
Yeah.
reveal. I don't want to
Yeah.
do the reveal till we get to it.
No. Yeah.
But they
Very
have
much.
a
I
they have
agree.
it's a wonderful, we get to see them fall in love.
Yeah. And obviously, a lot of this, the sense you get reading this is that all of this stuff has been happening maybe off camera while the rest of the series has been going on.
Yeah, there's things we have seen, and there's 99% more that we have not seen.
Yeah. So
this is when we
really
know that they've been love. We know they've gone out. We know they've slept together, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
But we see them fall in love.
Yeah.
Because we know, because he goes to tell her, I'm going on a dangerous mission. And she's like, why? And he goes, because I feel I have to tell you.
Yeah.
That's when he knows he's in love.
Yeah.
We're going to see where she knows she's in love. And I kind of like that they're separate things, and we learn about them in two totally different ways. Because she goes, yeah, I understand, I love you too, before he goes off on the mission.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's so what we get with the first few pages in is just sort of the recap of when they met at the circus in Turk County and the early issues, and then when he visits Charity and she happens to be there, and then we see them going on their first couple of dates, and then things sort of progressing beyond that, and it's sort of, you can see by the changes in, it's very subtle, the changes in Jack's facial hair, the changes in her hairstyle and stuff, that a little bit of time has passed while this has been going on.
Yeah, and I like that we get to the point to where they're in love, and it's adult. I mean, it's, I had seen it in Teen Titans comic. We got to see Corey and Dick at it like rabbits from time to time and get in trouble for it. Marv used to get in trouble for showing them in bed.
Yeah.
And he would go, yep, sorry, I forgot about it. Because they're adults. And you don't see anything dirty. You just see them, they sleep together. Yeah. But Jack, after they make love, is staring out the window. And they have this conversation about, he's a hero now. He is.
Yeah.
That's not going to stop. But he has a fear for it all. And then they start talking about Brian Savage. Is it Brian Savage?
Yeah, they talk about sort of how his predecessors have had to make sacrifices for love, or had to sacrifice love for other things and stuff. And that leads into the sort of themes for all the stories that we get in the flashback, which is the choices that some of the previous people associated with Starman have had to make.
Yeah, and and she's asking, is Savage, is that who they named the airfield out in Turk? This is a Roy kind of moment where
yes,
where it is but it works, that they're going to tie Scalp Hunter, Brian Savage, in with Balloon Buster.
Yeah,
because they just happen to have the same last names.
Yeah, I have the first appearance of Balloon Buster. It was, you've got to admire the restraint for not making it maybe named after Vandal Savage.
Well, that would have been cool.
Or making it that Balloon Buster was related to Vandal Savage.
Oh, see, Roy would have made them all
that's exactly
descendants.
What Roy would have done.
Yeah, these all would be rare offshoots of the Savage line, the good guys that were of his descent.
Exactly.
But it's a great moment. It's a lot of talking. I like the happy medium from over talking and no talk, because a lot of modern comics we talk about, it takes 6 issues to tell one story.
Yes.
Because it's all got to be about action and pinups and kind of stuff. But this is necessary conversation because it's building the character, talking about them, and it's great. And then we get this beautiful story of, all I could think of is Deadwood. While I was reading this next one, the Brian Savage story of him in 1891 as mayor of Opal City.
Yeah, it wouldn't have started. Would it have started within that series? I don't think it had. I haven't I haven't seen Deadwood. I had a former flatmate who was a big fan of it, and
It's probably one of the best Western period I've ever seen.
yeah,
Mensch, who's no longer he really wrote it. He studied how people talked because they would have learned from reading newspapers and novels
got
of
you.
how to talk in a certain way. So there are more words as languages progress, words change. It was very neat, and the history is all the characters are real people.
Yeah,
So, but it's really, really good. It is probably, I don't like a lot of the HBO shows because sometimes they're self-indulgent dramas. I think they're a little overwritten, but
sure.
it is not. But I like Westerns. I'm a fan of Westerns.
Yeah, I like a few. I've developed more of an appreciation of them in the last 10 years or so because, as everyone knows, I'm a big fan of the Magnificent Seven movies. So
They're worth it. When we do me and Dave are eventually going to do a Magnificent Seven
yeah,
a couple episodes. Hey, I think Jack would watch old Westerns. I'm
yeah,
thinking of what movies would Jack uh watch and make them the Opal City media episodes. Like I think he would watch Starlock 17.
that's interesting. I can imagine Jack sort of thinking that something like the Wild Bunch, whilst he would appreciate its influence and its importance, he'd maybe think it was a bit style over substance, and maybe like maybe go for what was the big John Wayne movie in 1969? He'd maybe go for that instead.
What, Rooster Cogburn?
Oh, I can't remember. Was it?
Or no,
Wasn't
oh, True
what's
Grit.
the one?
True Grit.
Yeah,
When he's
yeah,
Oscar.
yeah. That's the sort of one. Yeah,
I think he would probably pick the third of the Leone ones.
sure.
That which was called it was supposed to be titled Once Upon a Time in the Revolution, but they called You Better Duck Sucker, and it's Lee Marvin and Rod Steiger.
Well, that sounds
Um,
good. But
oh no, it's really good. And
I'm
Marvin's character is a dynamite expert, so he's not really good with a gun, but he will throw a stick of dynamite at a motherfucker.
yeah.
and
I can
it's
I can
another
imagine.
Jewish American playing a Mexican.
Right. I mean, I can imagine a conversation that Jack might have with someone where he lists all the different members of the Magnificent Seven, but talks about how two of the guys in the third film were both in Cool Hand Luke, and how that's a much better movie. I can imagine that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Seems like the
yeah,
sort of thing I would say.
yeah. George Kennedy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. But I like this. I really like the artist a lot. I don't really know what he's done. Maybe I don't know what he had done before.
It's not someone I recognise either. It's very Vertigo. This sort of story, this
That's a
chapter.
good that. Thank you, because that was like, is this old Western comic? It really reminds me of, say, like Heath in a way,
I get you.
a little
Yeah,
bit, not ink like Heath, but it definitely is
sure. Yeah, I get that.
more Warren comic.
I mean, it's very detailed. Like page 15 there's some brilliant stuff in the first panel, and it's very adult because there's some very implicit and stroke explicit sort of detailing. Um, it's it's got. I'll be honest. It's the Scalp Hunter issues are not ones that I ever really paid an awful lot of attention to.
I've read a
There's
handful. That's
another
about it.
Times Past much later on that features Brian Savage, and I remember I didn't read it for a couple of months after it had been out. It was like the series had been finished for a couple of months before I thought, oh shit, I'd better go and read that other because they to me they were the ones that had less impact on what was going on in the main series. They were the ones that didn't seem as important. But
Yeah,
this one just makes the point, I suppose, about heroes having to sacrifice and maybe walk away from something that they want.
yeah, because we find he has a lover
Yeah,
in this prostitute. That's very Deadwood because one of the main characters is a prostitute. But this always has confused me where the hell Opal City is.
yeah, yeah,
Because is it New Orleans? Is it Baltimore? Or is it out west? Because this is more Western thing.
yeah.
But
Because there's always the thing about how it's got a port and all this sort of stuff, and
so
I
it's,
remember,
where is it? I mean, there would be sheriffs in American cities, smaller cities.
yeah,
But this really has a Wild West. But he's come east, where they do refer to that he has come back east and
right,
assumed his white his Anglo name.
yeah,
And
yeah,
stopped, stopped dressing in the
yes,
fashion of the people who raised him and more in the
yeah,
people where he comes from.
yeah, yeah. Have
So
you, do you have any issues of Weird Western Tales with Scalp Hunter? You ever
No,
had
I
it?
don't. No, I mean,
I've
my
got
brother's a Western fan, not me.
Yeah, I've got quite a few. I've got quite a few that I bought after the event. I remember seeing him on the rack, on a spinner rack when I was a little boy. Um, but as a little boy, I wasn't interested in westerns at all, so I never read them as a kid. I've got
Yeah.
quite a few now.
I like, but it also shows you how Opal's changing. Opal
Yeah.
is, it's still a little rough. It needs a sheriff of the type of this character, and how he
Uh-huh.
transitions from a prostitute to a wealthy woman. He's
Sure.
going from, I was seen as a half breed, or
Yes.
someone who had gone native. Then
Yeah.
I became a sheriff, and I'm in this newer town to keep the crime down, and I will use the things I learned in the West. But
Yeah.
now the town's established, and I'm a respected member of the community, so I should have a respectful partner.
Yeah. Yeah. And she kind of makes the decision for him in a way, which is
Yeah.
interesting.
And
Great.
then she sees somebody comes trying to kill him, little holder from the West, and he pushes her out of the way. The guy's got a shotgun, and he kills the guy by throwing a knife at him.
Yeah. Brilliant.
And he realizes he can't go back, but it also means he can't go back to his other lover because he had dumped her.
Yeah.
So he chose, I am what I am. I'm a lawman.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
don't get to have I don't get to have happiness, or I don't get to have that kind of romantic happiness.
Yeah.
And I love that section. I love that it is absolutely gorgeous. The one page where it shows him pushing her
Yes.
and not going for a gun, but all of a sudden pulling a gun from somewhere and
Yeah.
getting the guy, and you see it's very Vertigo, and it's just, I think it's perfection in a lot of ways. So I mean, I think, I don't want to pick which section I like best because they're all very different, but they're so good. And then we go back to their conversation.
Yeah.
I like that
Good.
he has a diner bench set up booth in his kitchen. Jack would do
Yeah.
that. Jack would do that.
That's a very Jack thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, and they're sitting there, and then he talks about Balloon Buster, and that's
Yeah.
the end of chapter 1. Um, and then we go back, we jump ahead. It's the next chapter is called Chapter 2, Summer and a Father's Choice. A
Mm.
father's choice. Is that gonna happen? Something gonna like that gonna have to happen sometime in the book? There's a lot of foreshadowing in this stuff.
Very much so.
Yeah,
Gosh.
and I didn't catch it until this read,
Yeah, that's right. I don't think I'd registered that either. That is quite implicit, isn't it?
because that's my favorite part of Jack and of Ted.
Yeah.
They are real fathers. Oops,
Yeah.
Well, they are. Jack, we already know Jack has a kid,
Yeah. Yeah.
but he
Yeah.
wants to be a real father to them.
Yeah.
But
So more chat about the dangers of the lifestyle of being a superhero and how some people get a thrill from it and how that can sometimes lead from one thing to another.
yeah, I like that they're moon bathing on a roof, and he takes her out to the
Yeah.
destroyed observatory.
Yeah.
And this is 5 pages of conversation. But it's, I don't ever feel like it's slowing down the story. I don't ever feel like it is unnecessary. Every word is necessary.
Yeah. Well,
Because
I mean, it's a good thing of James to show us because he's not the room of the time to do it in the main book. It's showing the developing relationship. It's a great way of doing it.
It is. He's taking the opportunity. You have to do a Pulp annual.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not going to spend 3 issues or 5 issues telling Jack and Sadie's love story and give the reveal. I'm going to do it in a single issue, and I'm going to cram it full of great times past things that will show you the answer, the things to it. Because Jack, on the last page of this conversation, he says, no. Sadie goes, so you just brought me here to show me this? The destroyed thing goes, no. I was thinking months before we talked about the sacrifice and how easy it is for a hero to lose that which he loves. How that this life is a constant state of making choices. My father had that choice, that sacrifice. Your dad, when she goes, your dad, when, who did he have to sacrifice? Not your mom. No,
Yeah.
not my mom. And the next page is a masterpiece of Gene art showing Black
Boom.
Canary and Starman Ted fighting the sports master.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. This is like
Fucking hell,
Gene
man.
Hack's superstar. Like this is
This is the best stuff he's ever drawn, I think, in a lot of ways.
yeah, it's amazing. It's the perfect. I mean, it's coloured a lot more traditional. Some of it's well, these pages of Starman and Black Canary anyway, they're coloured more traditionally than a lot of Gene's stuff. A lot of Gene's stuff that's Starman adjacent or in Starman or in the shade or whatever. It's very always done very neutral, sort of quite muted sort of tones. But this one's very bright and colourful, photorealistic, and really, and
Yeah, it's
it's
very much an homage to the two Brave and the Bold team ups,
yes, yeah,
which are we were talking before, and I've already covered them with Jennifer DeVos
yeah, and
early on in the show's history, because I think they're two of the most I think they are the best written team up comics ever written. I mean, and they're 670 whatever, Jesus, 60 years old or more.
yeah, and that's
And this is the perfect complement to it.
yeah. I mean, this nice little montage, 2-page spread essentially that picking the boiling down the Church of the Brave and Bold to just a few images and sort of summing it up perfectly. I mean, I was saying to Ross before we started, like, Peter and I did the two Starman and Black Canary issues on the Earth 2 podcast years ago now. I think we did them back in 2020. They were quite early on that we did them because that was where we were in the chronology. And if we all had the time and the money and the inclination, I would love to do them again and get Ross and Kelly to voice Starman and Black Canary, you know, to do a special edition multicast versions of them. Maybe for Christmas one year we'll try and do.
Oh, I think that I'm in. I think it'd be great because they're really Gardner Fox. We were talking earlier about Golden Age comics. It can be rough, but the writing isn't always rough. I think with certain writers, Broom and the two gentlemen, Gardner and Broom, who wrote most of the All-Star comics. And I think probably Broom's scripts are better because they're not, his are not tied down to splitting everybody up.
Yeah.
And having different artists. He was writing, we had one artist writing, drawing everything. They were more what we consider traditional comic book. But I like that these 2 pages, you get those 2 team ups, and then that they had a romance. And they've already inferred, Jack already knows about this. His dad's kind of told him about it.
Yeah.
And Wesley does. Oh, wait a minute. Wesley lets it slip.
That's right. Yeah.
Wesley lets it slip. Yeah.
Sand stars. Yeah. Because I remember Jack being really surprised. And it's one of these things. It's a sort of, it was always a sort of fan theory. And it was, confirmed like nearly 30 years ago now. Terrifying to think that 1997, when this was published, is 28 years ago. But it's again, it's treating a very realistic, very adult way. Then we get a 2-page spread of them sort of in the all together and getting dressed and talking about whether or not they can keep doing this. And that's, again, as I keep saying, this is all very adult. It's not done in a sort of style of titillation or anything like that. But it's because you see this Canary's bare bum at the top of page 30.
Yeah,
But it's done in such a way as like you really believe that because they've had these intense experiences together that this could happen.
And and the conversation, post lovemaking is up. I had some dodgy romances in my 20s with people I shouldn't have maybe taken. We shouldn't have been with each other, but it happened.
Yeah.
And these are real adult things. People make choices. Yeah. He's married and in love with his wife, but like you said, there's something about them being a crime fighting team that has drawn them to this.
I mean, in some ways, it's like an office romance in a way, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, it is. They're work partners, and they ended up,
And I've not proud. I've made a couple of bad decisions in that area over the years. So it was a bad decision, really, unless you're both on the same page in the beginning. And it's it happens. It's not the sort of I know people who are I won't name any names, but I remember like when I worked in the bank when I was much younger, and there was a gentleman and a lady who'd worked together for a good couple of decades by that point, and while I was working there, he left his wife for her, because they realised that they weren't getting any younger and they wanted to be together. And sometimes, real things come out of it. It's It's a nasty grown up world, listeners. Sometimes this sort
Yeah.
of stuff happens.
Yeah. Life is not, you make mistakes, and you make adult mistakes. And I like how the private detective that was following him for the mist goes, yeah, don't worry about that, but you're going to turn a blind eye while I rob a bank.
Yeah.
And then they had that uncomfortable conversation is if this gets out, they'll lose it because they're both married.
Yes.
She's married
To Larry.
to Larry, and he's married to Jack's
Doris.
mom.
Yeah.
And but they go to another diner where they're talking, and they make the decision. And then we get this double page spread where they just whoop the bad guy's ass at the bank.
Phenomenal. Great.
This is, folks, how you do action without it being the entire book.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the entire book.
It does not.
And then you find out the secret was kept by one of the Baileys.
Yes. Yes, I like that bit. Because again, it's adult conversations. Ted's pals on the force know what could happen, what could go wrong, what he stands to lose. So they step up and they keep his secret.
Yeah, because it's not, because he understands that you made a mistake. It's a friend. You made a mistake. I'm going to help you keep it a secret because your wife doesn't need that hurt. Yeah. Just go back and be a good husband.
Yeah.
And he is a good husband, and he's a good father.
Yeah.
But we got to see that Ted's a grown up.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing. It adds a lot more of an adult, realistic sort of level to the relationships between the Justice Society characters. I was saying to Ross, I think before we started recording, the Ted and Dinah thing is referenced in Mark Waid and Barry Kitson's JLA Year One, which was published during 1998, 97, 90, so very soon after this. There's just a sort of scene where there's a Justice Society reunion at Dinah Drake's house, and she has a conversation with her mum, and something is said like, Uncle Ted's there, and Uncle Al's there, and Uncle Wesley's there. And Dinah's mum tells her about what happened between her and Ted, and I think a plate gets dropped or something. And because at this point, in the JLA Year One plot, Canary's kind of taking a bit of a shine to Barry, but she doesn't know that Barry's involved with Iris. So
because she doesn't know who he is, right? Yeah, they don't know each other's secret identities.
So there's that element of it. So it's it was kind of used elsewhere again very quickly, which is nice.
Yeah. I do like the end of this chapter where they go back to and he goes, the next day my mother told Dad that she was pregnant with David. The affair ended just in time. He could be a father in good conscience. He had to choose, and he chose my mother. But I'll never know if he was happy with the life he had because of that choice. Whether he's happy now. And I'm like, it's something. I mean, my parents are both gone now.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, my parents, had divorced, and I didn't see him romantically head over heels in love with my mom because they'd been married for, so long when I was a kid. But I did see it with my stepmother, that he was doting, that he was like a little kid. And my dad is a Scot who grew up in New York and was a Marine. He could be stoic as shit.
Yeah.
But you knew he loved you because he was great at Christmas. He always said he loved you, but he wasn't overtly affectionate.
Yeah.
Because, way he was. But it's neat here because children really don't see their parents as adults until much later. Yeah. Like when you've been an adult for a long time. I mean, you reevaluate your parents. I was in my 30s. I have to look at I'm in my 30s now. I'm not even a kid. There's no way. I've got to kind of go, hey, and I was fortunate. My parents split up, and my dad was very good. Don't worry about it. And that's between me and her. It has nothing to do with you. We love you. And so, but you still question things. Am I like, I saw my dad as a player when he wasn't really a player. It was weird. But Jack having that thing, and the way it's drawn, he has a look of honest. I don't know the answer to these questions.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful page because you've got the sun coming up. They've obviously sat there all night on the hill, and she's obviously deep in thought because she sat there blowing this dandelion behind him.
And yeah, and
And
they're very much in love.
nicely,
The body language is great.
yeah, because he's got a leg up, he's feeling guarded, but she's facing him, or dress is hitched up or whatever. I don't think that's too suggestive, but she's receptive, she's listening to him, and he's still got his guard up because he's kind of wary. He's thinking about the stuff that his dad had to do, and he's now obviously wondering what he would have to do.
Yeah, it's amazing. So we're gonna go to chapter 3. I'm gonna keep reading these intros because I've noticed on this read that he's not being subtle, but he is being subtle of what the foreshadowing. This is Sadie. Winter's chill failed to cool my passion. As fall fell to the bullying frost of later months, so the fires of my love seemed to burn fiercer, still in defiance of the snows, perhaps, in defiance of my fears that Jack would hate me when he learned who I was, who I really was.
Yeah,
Chapter 3, Winter and a Brother's Choice.
yeah. I think the bad guys that we see him fighting here, I think were they in Issues of the Outsiders or something?
Yeah, these are yeah. These are
Big
this is a
guy.
these yeah. This is Earthquake, I think
Um,
his name, and he is a outsider's
yeah.
villain.
There's Bobo, who I feel like we haven't seen for a while.
Yeah, Bobo. I always think of Steeljack from Astro City when I see Bobo. They're basically the same
Yeah,
character.
you're absolutely right. Yeah, totally.
But it's a great. I like Bobo. It's Bobo and Matt and Jack teaming up. I think that's great. And Jack gets his ass kicked
Yes.
because he gets a little too close sometimes.
Yeah.
Because his his staff doesn't create force fields like Green Lantern, so he gets beat up.
Yeah.
And it's great. Again, folks, action, 3 pages.
Hmm.
But we get to see Sadie in the hospital. And she think, I thought I lost you. I saw you on television, blood everywhere, your blood. And he's like, yeah, no, one of my nicest shirts went bye-bye.
Yeah.
And um,
That's very Jack, isn't it? What he, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it is. And she's thinking, and it's like she goes, and I don't know if this comes directly. He said, I couldn't bear it if you were killed. I didn't think I'd feel this way, but I do. And he's like, I'm not going anywhere. I'll have to a lot more gray hairs and tattoos before I decide to curl up my toes. And she just goes, tell me about your brother. Because you mentioned he sacrificed to be Starman.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then we get Steve Yao. He really knows how to make the Golden Age costume work really
Yeah.
well.
This story's, I think, the saddest one.
I
It
think it
really
is too. I think it is too. The weird coloring on the first couple pages because it's at night, that
Yeah.
everybody's got like a gray tone. It
Yeah.
actually has a more 1940s art feel to me in a little way. Some of the action,
Yeah. It's very
like
well done. Like the shading and the lighting and stuff's great. So we see that David is a little clumsy. He trips on the cape. So that's, maybe setting up that maybe he wasn't going to be the best Starman. And they can't really, the two bad guys don't really take him seriously until he zaps them with the rod.
yeah, he does have a green cowl in here on the
That's
digital
good.
copy. In the regular one, does he have a green cowl?
Yep, green
Okay,
cowl and the floppy. Yep.
yeah. So we see him and his dad talking, and he's talking about his girlfriend Annie and
Yeah.
how he loves her, he wants to marry her, but he leaves her. He gives, he makes the
Yeah.
sacrifice
Because he has
early.
a conversation with his dad, and they mention that they're not speaking to Jack at this point because obviously they had that row.
Oh,
Famous.
Ted's the nastiest about it.
Yeah.
Ted's
And
really angry at Jack.
and then yeah, we see David having a chat with Annie when he sort of talks about how important the Starman legacy is to him. It's everything to him, and he has to make that choice between being with her or being Starman, and he chooses to be Starman. It's yeah, it's and she asks him to leave, and he says, I love you, Anne," and she says, a lot of good that does me, and he flies
Yeah.
off, him crying, and she's crying, and then we hear that basically the next day is when he has the argument with Jack at the observatory. All right, so I was wrong on that. Apologies. when him and Jack have the big row at the observatory, and then David gets shot, like we see at the start of the Zero issue.
Yeah, it's really and I like the panel where we see that all in one. It's one panel on a
Yeah,
page. And the tragic death of him.
yeah.
Um,
And you sort of you can't help but think if David had chosen to stay with Annie, then you know he might not have been on top of that building thinking like he was. He might have been with Annie, or he might have been if he
yeah, it
tried
really
to.
does give that night context that he's not a failure. He was distracted.
Yeah.
And I like that. I do really kind of like that.
Oh, excuse me. It's
Uh,
yeah, because it's one of the things that's sort of in it is the effects that choices sort of have in your life. So Ted and Dinah decide to stay with their spouses. David decided to become Starman and not stay with Annie. So this is all influencing, obviously. Stacey's thought, not Stacey, Sadie's thought. Who's Stacey? Gavin and Stacey. I'm thinking about Sadie's thought process about she has to choose whether or not to tell Jack who she really is and to ask him what she wants to ask him because she's heard all these stories about heroes losing their loves, choosing not to be with them. So she's got to weigh all that up.
yeah, it's really good. I mean, this dialogue is so good. I mean, he can be flowery, but he can also have write a real conversation.
Yeah, I think he's really calmed down at this point. Like some of
Yeah. He's
the first
found
couple
his
of issues are,
yeah.
as we discussed in the past, are really overwritten. Like the city, the breeze caresses the city like a
Yeah.
lover every 3 pages or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a really believable conversation. Jack's in the hospital after the battle with Shakedown and the O'Dares and stuff, and Stacey sort of not Stacey Sadie sort of tells them that the first time they met it was by accident, but then she obviously sort of thought, well, you know, something happened to my brother, and she believes that he's still alive, and she tells him, and there's a great bit when she sort of says, um, her brother was killed, but his colleagues hadn't bothered to tell her family, not immediately.
Yeah, that's
And
great. On that
that's
first page of that conversation, what I like is in the first two panels they're holding hands,
yes,
and he pulls away in the sixth panel. His
yeah,
facial expression is changing, and then he is not holding his hands, and he's got his arms crossed over him, which is a sign of closing yourself off.
yeah.
Well, she gives him all the thing. It's like, he goes, you're not an artist since when? You're an artist since when? You work in a bookstore. He
Yeah.
goes, well, I discovered you used to paint, and I was worried that my being an artist and you no longer painting, that was weird. So she has all these, I don't want to mention this to you because it might upset you because I love you and it's not that
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
But the important shit comes out. And he doesn't even know who the other Starman's real, no one knows who his real identity is, do they?
No, I don't think so. I think
I,
maybe Katie Faulkner probably was about it.
yeah, that's about it.
Um, I can't remember if he told Superman.
I don't
Um,
think, I don't think
can't
he
remember
did.
if he told Power Girl, but you'll get to the Power Girl ones fairly soon. I think she comes
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
Her and Phantom Lady, or have they been? I can't remember.
And she tells him, and he withdraws. It's just she
Yeah.
feels terrible. She's crying. Um, and she where is it where she says it? I wasn't intending to sleep with you honestly. I just wanted to be your friend. I didn't tell you my real name in case that scared you off, but I fell in love with you.
Yeah.
And then she explains it all, and then she makes her request. She tells who he was, so who are you and who was your brother? Not that I'd get so spooked. My name's
Mm.
Jane Peyton. My brother is Will Peyton. He was a Starman too. He's alive somewhere, I'm certain, and I want you to find him. And that last page is a single panel, and Jack is just, this is kind of heartbreaking, you
Yeah,
know.
because she's worried about what he's going to decide to do. Do you think the shadow that Jack is casting there is echoing the shape of the cosmic rod? Or is that just me? Is that my Freudian interpretation?
No, I think I don't know why you would have that pattern there for any other reason
Yeah.
that it is, but I don't know. It's this is one of the best issues of this comic series in a lot of ways. I just think it does what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Is it wordy? But yeah, but we know so much more about Jack as a human being and way more about Sadie. And since I didn't know who Sadie was, I didn't know who Jane
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. I
Um,
didn't either. I
because
didn't either.
she's not shown in any of the flashbacks we've seen to Will in this book on purpose.
Yeah, of course.
But she looks
So, like,
more like Sadie in these issues than she does in earlier ones.
yeah,
I mean, she looks more like the way she's drawn by Lyle
yeah,
and Hoover.
yeah. I mean, given that you've been reading um the Will Payton series as you've been rereading the Jack series, how do you take this revelation now?
It makes perfect sense because I think Roger Stern does an incredible job of building that family
Yeah,
because it's a family with issues. His mom hates their dad. They meet their dad just long enough for him to die.
yeah,
That puts a wedge between mom and Will and makes Will go on walkabout.
yeah.
Um, Roger
And
really handles the soap opera. There's not a lot, but it's important soap opera.
yeah,
You
and
need
she,
that.
I mean, Will's sister is such a big part of the first, couple dozen issues. She's like, if it was a TV show, she'd be second in the cast list in the credits.
Oh yeah.
She's
Oh
such a
yeah.
big part of it. And I'm it's one thing that I kind of regret about not having read the Will series. I can't comment on how big a revelation this would have been as a regular reader. So we'll have to pay attention to the letters pages over the next couple of issues and see what the comments from people are like, how people react and how they felt about
Yeah, if you could go ahead and find something, send me a screen cut because I don't. I mean, I've got
it.
all I've got is a compendium now. I
Yeah.
wish they did put what I like about the Silver Age Marvel omnibus is you get the letter pages.
Oh, really? No,
Oh
that's
yeah, the FF
that's
if
good.
they're all in them. If it's any of the traditional, it's not the event or the artist ones.
Yeah.
It's the 1 through 5s. It has all those great letter pages.
Interesting. I'll have to
Um,
look ahead then. I'll check. I'll
yeah,
check what the
bec-
scuttlebutt was.
yeah, because I just remember how much I love this and how I really love. This is the stuff we're getting into where I mean, I love the whole series, but I really do like his journey in space. One, because
Yeah.
it pays homage to all the wonderful science fiction that DC did,
Yeah.
and they're good at it. They're really good at it.
Yeah.
And we really get more Prince Gavin just in little ways, and we get this love, and I think we get this love affair, and it all ties up so much. Their love affair, their love for each other becomes a huge part of this series.
Yeah. And it's basically the catalyst for everything that happens in the second half.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
Mhm.
that's the thing when you realize reading this one that James has seeded it out. I wonder how much of it was in his plan all along, but if Jack met her at the circus in Turk County, that's what, issue 5 or 6 at the earliest, 6 or 7, round about that. So
Yeah, it's no later than that.
is
Yeah,
it
it's early. It's the second
9?
story. It's
Right.
the second story. He meets her. He bumps into her. It's got to be issue 5 or 6
Yeah, I
because
couldn't
the
remember.
first arc's only really short.
Yeah.
Because that first
Um,
trade is actually the first trade's like the first 3 stories.
right. Okay. Um,
Um, but overall, I mean,
yeah.
I think this is what an annual should be, you know. Um,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
just love it. It's
It,
so
it,
important.
it's integrated. It's not a throwaway. It's not you can miss this quite easily. It's not a flash. It's a flashback, but it's an important flashback. It's not it's not an Elseworld. It's not an imaginary story. Not a dream. Not a hoax.
No, it's exactly what it is what is in the label. It's great. We're gonna tidy this up because we're not gonna do recommendations because we still got one more comic to talk about, and
Yep.
then we'll do what we recommend. But as always, check out their two podcast. It was
Thank
in
you.
my top 10 this year. I think it was number 5. It was tied with Untitled Star Trek project as one of the top 10 things that I enjoyed over the last year.
Thank you.
Uh,
Yeah. We always
and
appreciate the support.
oh, it's I don't folks, I jump in, I do history podcasts and I jump around because there's so many. I get overload. But I cannot live without her to an Untitled. Like they're my Thursday and Friday ride into work.
I believe we're going to be. We haven't. we haven't recorded anything for 2025 yet, but I finished some writing the other night, so I believe we're going to record our first 2 episodes this Wednesday. And then I've got a bit of writing to do for another one that's very soon after that. And then we have to decide. We haven't really decided yet how we're going to do JLE 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 4. So we'll have to stay tuned for that.
What's 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3, 4? What story is that?
That's the Carrie Bates and the Elliot S. Maggin on Earth 1 and Earth 2 storyline. It's a very talky one.
Yeah, it's
our pal Chuck Lorridans, who voices Green Arrow for us, he mentioned to me that that Elliot Maggin is on Facebook. So I messaged Peter late last night saying, Chuck's just told me that Elliot Maggin's on Facebook. I dare you. So we'll see if Peter makes an approach to Elliot Maggin to see if Elliot Maggin will
voice himself.
I don't. Well, we'll see.
We'll see. I would love that. That would be hysterical.
It would be amazing. I don't know if it's practical. I know that Elliot's probably in his 70s by now, so I don't know. But it's a nice. Oh, I just see you're wearing. Finally, see that you're wearing your Element Lad T-shirt today.
Oh.
Super.
My wife was like, "What is it?" It's the letter E.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll have to see how that plays out. No pressure, listeners. Don't come looking for me to lynch me if we don't get that to happen. But it's a nice. Chuck, if Chuck came up with it, so we'll see what happens. But yeah,
oh my god, I think it'd be great.
We'll see what happens.
All right, folks, we'll be back in 2 weeks with Talking to David, issue 37 of Starman. Yeah. And as always, be safe, be smart, please be kind in one another, and read some pulp. There are some good pulp comics out there.
Yeah. Cheers, folks. It's what happens. Like, we don't speak for like a month or two, and then we talk for a whole day.
Oh no shit! All right. Well, hello, and welcome to Stop. Let's Team Up. Oh fuck! Wrong part.
Leave that.